Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points, joined on this fine Monday evening by nobody. We had a guest lined up. Things kind of fell through, and now I am recording a little bit later than I would have preferred. But you know what? Stuff happens. It's the week leading up to media days and training camps and stuff like that. So people are kind of running around like chickens without heads, and it happens sometimes. But we do actually have some news to talk about today. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about the fallout from Fred VanVleet, reportedly tearing his ACL. He will be missing, it would appear, probably the entirety of this upcoming season. And we will, there are a few aspects of this entire thing to kind of suss out. First and foremost, obviously, really sucks for VanVleet. One of the best stories in the NBA, has continued to kind of bet on himself. And, it's just, I think he's like the highest scoring, or one of the highest scoring undrafted players in the history of the league. And to have this happen here before such a promising season, it objectively sucks. It just really, really does. So, thoughts, prayers, and positive vibes out there to Fred as he embarks on that recovery and that process. And then to all the Rockets fans, right? It sucks to head into a season with the kind of outlook that the Rockets have, or had, maybe, I guess, and have it, kind of ruined before you even see a game of that team play together. Brutal, absolutely brutal stuff. So we'll talk about that. I want to go through the tiers of the Western Conference now with, an updated version of them, because I do think this severely impacts the Rockets' chances of vying for a championship this season. So we'll talk about that. Had a whole bunch of people in response to the news today ask me, should we send them Gabe? Should we do this? Should we do that? So we'll talk a little bit about some of the trade implications here and what I'm hearing on that front. Made a couple quick calls, nothing too crazy right now. Everybody, again, is pretty hyper-focused. The Lakers are pretty hyper-focused on the upcoming season, but, it's always worth it to field calls, and the Lakers appear to have fielded a couple calls. So we have a ton that we need to get to over the course of this thing. So let's go ahead and dive on in, starting with the biggest news so far, that being about Fred VanVleet missing the entirety of the season. All right. So first and foremost, as always, please hit that subscribe button. I don't know why this is so funky. My StreamYard is freaking out. This is why I'm leaving StreamYard. But anyway, yeah, we'll go ahead and start with the biggest news, that Fred VanVleet will be out for the season. Quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button if you guys are watching here on YouTube. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to YouTube, and you can find the show there at youtube.com/@LakersLounge. And we can go get into things there. A reminder, as we get closer to the season, the plan is eventually to might just stop streaming to Twitter altogether. We'll see. Still kind of going through some of the pros and cons to it, but the best way, if we do wind up making that decision to avoid missing anything, is to hit that subscribe button. It's right there. You can see it right there. And then if you guys are listening to the show in the morning via podcast, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. All right. So according to multiple reports, I think Shams was on it first, Fred VanVleet was working out with the Houston Rockets in a pre-training camp, team-wide deal. and tore his ACL. I believe they're in like the Bahamas or something like that. And there was further reporting on this one from I think Kelly Iko, who is now at Yahoo. Congrats to Kelly on that. But he reported that it was a kind of team wide pre-training camp that they were all participating in, or most of the guys were participating in. And Fred VanVleet went down, and he has torn his ACL, and the reports are saying that he is going to get surgery at some point in the upcoming week. Now, as far as for the Rockets, you look at their depth chart, and it is not pretty. It basically comes down to, will they start Amen Thompson? Is it Amen? I think it's Amen, right? One of the two Thompsons. He is, but I guess the debate now is starting Thompson and have him basically operate kind of like Caruso did in some of those lineups, where Caruso was like a 3-and-D point guard. And they would essentially have Thompson do a version of that where and make them just an absolute bear defensively and focus on dominating games that way. Problem with that though is that, like, you look at the rest of the starting group there, and there just isn't enough creation. There isn't enough player for player creation or creativity there. And you could do your turn, my turn. Kevin Durant is kind of a cheat code for those kinds of systems. But as we saw with Phoenix, especially with KD at this stage of his career, where he isn't quite as dominant as he was, 4, 5, 6 years ago, that comes with some limitations. So the other option that they have, one that it'll be interesting to see if Ime Udoka goes with this option. But the other option they have is starting Reed Shepherd, who will be in his second season. Didn't play the role that I think a lot of people thought he was going to play in last year. And has shown some promise. Absolute knockdown shooter. Played really, really well in summer league over this last summer, which is kind of what you're hoping for from a second year player. And does have some of the tools necessary to step up in this spot, but it would be a risk, right? Like, I kind of liken it to the Vikings this season with JJ McCarthy, where now obviously they didn't enter the season with a veteran who got hurt and forced JJ into the spot. The Vikings brought JJ along of their own volition. But with JJ McCarthy, the first couple of games, 7 of those first 8 quarters looked pretty bad, honestly. And the offense looked like it was functioning with training wheels and guardrails on it, so that McCarthy couldn't get himself into too much trouble. And even with those guardrails in place, he still turned the ball over a couple of times, one being for a pick 6. So it's like, you could, and then now look, this last weekend against the Bengals was a supreme outlier game, right? The defense was just so dominant that JJ would have looked great in that game. But in this last one, I thought Wentz moved the ball really well. His numbers weren't fantastic. He's not a very good quarterback either. But my point here being that if the Rockets basically elect to have Reed Shepherd step into the spot, it comes with a lot of risk, because I would argue that this team is probably too good to hope that a second-year player who didn't play a very consistent role last season would be able to step into that spot. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do here to make things work. And the other thing too with Houston, they are up against the first apron. They don't have enough space to sign a vet min contract right now. So if they do decide to, bring in a player, they would have to make a cost-cutting move elsewhere. Brooklyn does have some cap space to be able to welcome some, or, to trade for a contract and bring a player in that would allow Houston to go out and sign like a Westbrook, I guess. I don't know. Um, I kind of wonder if Brogdon is kind of like asking the Knicks to let him out of his training camp invite. Yeah, I don't know necessarily the specifics of how that would work, but I'm sure he's kind of looking at that situation saying, damn. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how this is all going to play out. And, one of the things that I've said recently with the Kawhi situation is if or when the Brooklyn Nets are going to stop taking contracts into their cap space so that they can be able to offer Kawhi max money if his contract gets nullified. And if his contract is, nullified, he's going to be looking probably to take the most money that he can get. Brooklyn would be the team that could offer him that. And so if you're Brooklyn, do you take an extra small contract into that space for the sake of an extra second round pick? Do you or do you try to maintain as much of that financial flexibility so you could offer as much as you could possibly offer Kawhi Leonard? This is where, I told you guys, as we get closer to the season, these storylines from over the summer are going to start linking up a little bit. And that, like, when Fievel Goes West, that water tower that they had, and it would just it would be one droplet of water that would hit the same spot on the ground all of the time. And then they finally opened it, right? And then the flowers immediately started growing. Like right now, we are right there as they have realized, oh, yeah, that's right. The cats completely stopped the water. How do we open that up? Like we are right there before the water starts hitting the ground again and the flowers start growing in that scene. That's where we're at. And I think this is one of those cases where a couple of those storylines are probably going to come, if not to a head, but they are certainly, going to run tangentially to each other. And we might see some this is the kind of thing. This is a team that headed into the season with legitimate title aspirations. They no longer have them as they're currently constructed without Fred VanVleet for the year. VanVleet also has a no trade clause because he is on a 1-1 deal with a player option for next season. He did not waive that no trade clause. And I don't know how many teams are going to be interested in trading for a smaller point guard coming off of an ACL tear with another $25 million on the books for next season. So yeah, the Rockets are in a tough spot here, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle all of this, and which teams kind of sidle up. It's an ugly part of the industry, but one team's misgivings or one team's shit luck is another team's great luck. And so it's going to be interesting to see which teams kind of, call up Houston or take the couple phone calls from Houston to see how desperate Houston is to fix this situation and give themselves a chance at the championship again. Because right now they don't have it. Like I would knock them a couple tiers down in my West rankings, which obviously we're going to get to here in a second. But yeah, it's a tough spot, man. It really, really sucks. I love watching Fred VanVleet play. Just tough as nails, dude. Really great story. And the Rockets are going to desperately miss him this season. So let's take a second here, and then when we come back, we'll get into some of the West, the tiers in the West now after the immediate fallout from this, while we wait for kind of the longer term resolutions to the situation. So my dumbass pulled up the MLB standings. That is not very helpful. All right, so here in the West, you have I think a fairly clear tier system to me anyway. You have the so to me you have OKC and Denver at the top of the conference. What order you want to put them in, your call. And end of the day, like it's I could understand why you would want to put the Nuggets up there. or why you would want to put the Thunder up there. The Thunder are coming off of the title, running back essentially the same team. They were dominant last regular season. To me, I think Denver made serious strides this offseason, has the best player in the league in Nikola Jokic, and honestly, like pushed OKC to the brink, even with a severely flawed roster last year. So to me, I would go Nuggets, Thunder 1-2. If you want to go Thunder, Nuggets 1-2, I I totally get it. After that, it's I think I would put the Lakers in a tier with every other team there. I would lump them in with Minnesota. I would lump them in with the man. I think it's I think it's just the Lakers and Timberwolves in that second tier. I'm not willing to put the Clippers in that tier because we know Kawhi is going to miss a bunch of time, and we know that we don't know what the fallout to their cap circumvention situation is going to be. So it's hard to really take them very seriously. I think with this injury, I would put the Rockets below that tier personally. So I would have the Lakers and Timberwolves in that next tier after the Nuggets and OKC tier. After that, I would put the Warriors and the Rockets and man, what would you do here? I think it's just the Warriors and the Rockets in that next tier. And the only reason I'm putting the Warriors in that tier is because of Steph. Like he is just that special that I would put him in that tier. Uh here's a funny tweet that or not a funny tweet, but my colleague over at Clutch Points, Brett Siegel, has been doing a lot of reporting on the Kuminga situation. Um and he shares the opinion that is pretty widely out there that Kuminga, that it's gonna be figured out over the next few days, I would imagine, in some way, shape, or form. But Brett, tweets out that the Warriors are getting ready to sign Kuminga and then Horford and then Melton and then Seth Curry and Gary Payton II. And that's like a 5-9 and under team. They lost Kevon Looney. He went to the Pelicans this year. Like your starting lineup might be what? Steph, Jimmy, Draymond. Like, would you go with Gary Payton II there? Or no, I guess Melton would start. So it would be Steph, Melton, Jimmy, Draymond, and Kuminga? Horford? Like, I don't know, guys. Like that is there. That's a really small team, and I don't love that roster, to be completely honest. Buddy Hield, I guess, is also there, but I don't think he would start over Melton. Like, where's their beef? Where's the beef in San Francisco? I know there's probably a lot of vegans in the greater San Francisco area, but there is not enough beef on that team. And then again, we just talked about the Rockets and the concerns facing them if Reed Shepherd's doesn't if Reed Shepherd isn't ready to step into starting point guard role. I you know I you look here at I'm looking at the Rockets roster now. They have plenty of beef. You have Steven Adams, you have Clint Capella. It's a huge team, so I'm not too worried about that stuff. But with the Rockets, they don't have anywhere near enough, I think, on-ball creativity. With the Warriors, I don't think they have anywhere near enough size. So I don't like. I think I would put those two teams in tier 3, which means, by the way, like if these tiers play out the way that we think, the Lakers could be looking at home court advantage, which is significant. All right. So far I have OKC and and Denver in tier 1. I have the Lakers in Minnesota in tier 2. Then I have Golden State and Houston in tier 3. And then it becomes kind of a jumbled mess, right? You have Memphis, who maybe they bounce back finally. Jaw has his head on a little straighter. New Orleans, maybe they finally stay healthy. Dallas, we got to see how well D'Angelo Russell can keep that ship afloat while they wait for Kyrie Irving if he ever returns. I think that would be the next. In the Clippers, I would put the Clippers in that fourth tier to me because of everything going on there. Um, and then, you round out the West with like Phoenix is going to be pretty bad this year. Portland and Utah. Portland probably be better than Utah, maybe. Utah is going to be tanking. San Antonio could be legit. I could see San Antonio maybe jumping up a tier here or there. And then Sacramento is going to be terrible. So the West, I hate that this is kind of how we're having this conversation or why we're having this conversation. But in the days before media day and training camp and all that stuff, the Lakers find themselves with a pretty good chance at home court in the first round of the playoffs. This was already a season that I'd been banging the drum to go and go all in for and really try to push some chips into the middle of the table and see what kind of tweaks and improvements you can make to your team. I think it's even more so the case now with Fred VanVleet missing the entire year. Now, again, we'll see. I would be pretty surprised, honestly, if Houston, given how pot committed they are to this season, having traded for Kevin Durant, we saw what it looked like in Phoenix last year when a Kevin Durant team doesn't have enough on-ball creativity. It was a pretty like that. And now, you had the Bradley Beal bad contract, and there was just a whole bunch of bad stuff and bad juju going on in Phoenix last year. So I wouldn't compare it apples to apples here. But my point is that you do need somebody to initiate your offense. You do need somebody to think about the game like a point guard. Like this is something that I'm very biased on because I used to be a point guard. But you can just tell those teams that have somebody out there who is always thinking of, all right, that guy has it going. Let's make sure we get this guy an extra shot here and there. Oh, no, that guy hasn't gotten a shot in a little while. If he doesn't get a shot pretty soon, he's going to force something and take us out of a rhythm. The guy who sees, maybe defensively that it's getting a little squirrely out there and pulls the guys together at the free throw line or during a free throw to bring everybody in and get everybody on the same page. Like those floor generals, and Fred VanVleet, very much one of those guys. Also, very importantly here, an extension of Ime Udoka in terms of his approach to the game, his kind of outlook on basketball. Those two guys have been very simpatico since they both got there, and missing one half of that equation, I think, is really going to affect them. So, yeah, I don't really know what Houston is going to look like, and I think at some point they're going to have to, think long and hard about going out, because even if Reed Shepherd is really good, that can't be the extent of your point guard depth, and you don't have enough, space to sign somebody into sign a vet to help with that stuff. Because I'm looking at it here. You have JD Davison, who is a 22-year-old, not very many minutes under his belt. You have Reed Shepherd, again, 21-year-old. You have that's it. That's the extent of their point guards. Fred VanVleet, Reed Shepherd, and JD Davison. That's it. That's not enough. That's nowhere near enough. They need to they're going to have to add a player one way or another. So it's going to be interesting to see if they, they have some guys that are not making a ton of money who maybe you could send out to Brooklyn for like a fake second rounder or something. But end of the day here, yeah, I guess you technically have Aaron Holiday on the roster, but he's 28 years old and has never really been all that good. So yeah, let's talk about Gabe. And the notion of, potentially picking up an asset for somebody who, as of 24 hours ago, if they were going to move Gabe, the discussion was it would probably cost something to get off of Gabe's expiring money. With Houston as desperate as they are, is that a call worth having? Is that a talk worth having? I would imagine so. So, all right. Well, we have this comment here. Tony Lee, the Rockets should get on the phone with the Lakers and see if AR is available. They don't have enough stuff for AR. Like, why would the Lakers trade them? Why would the Lakers take themselves out of title contention and make the Rockets actual title contenders without getting back so much that the Rockets would no longer be contenders, So I don't think the Rockets are going to be they can't yet, like, yeah, like, if you're talking about AR, like you better get a Şengün back or an Amen Thompson back, somebody like that. Like, maybe you can get Jabari Smith or not maybe, but like you would have to send over a Jabari Smith and then some stuff outside of that. Like, if the Lakers were to do that, it would be for fit after seeing what it looks like with Luka, with LeBron and Austin together. But the Lakers would, like, I'll tell you this right now. From what I have heard, Austin would be completely off of the table in any discussion with the Houston Rockets in this kind of a spot. Now, Gabe Vincent, that's an interesting one, right? Like, Gabe Vincent, I'm going to pull up the trade machine here and go through some of the scenarios. Now, remember, this is difficult because the Lakers and the Rockets are up against the first apron hard cap. So you would have to almost match dollar for dollar what these teams would send out and bring in. So, like, I there was a funny joke going around: should the Lakers trade Gabe Vincent for Dorian Finney-Smith? That would be funny. But Dorian makes too much money. So Gabe makes $11.5 million this year. Dorian Finney-Smith makes $12.7 million this year. Unless the Lakers were to trade like Dalton to Brooklyn to open up some extra space, they wouldn't be able to do that. Now, as far as, like, the Lakers are still pretty thin at center. The Rockets are very much not thin at center. So maybe that's a conversation that you could maybe get into where, again, so you send out Gabe, he's 11.5. Steven Adams makes 14 million this year. They also picked up Clint Capella. He makes 6.7 million this year. Now with all of these guys, so Clint Capella, not eligible to be traded until December. So that, obviously complicates things there. Maybe the Lakers, let's see. So Josh Okogie makes $2.2 million this year. So if the Lakers, you could send over Bronny. You can't. I would not do that. But like if the Lakers sent Gabe Vincent, that's 11.5, and got back Okogie and Capella. No, you can't even do that because the Rockets are up against that hard cap. So yeah, unfortunately, because of the amount of money that Gabe Vincent makes, the 11.5 that he makes, sending him to Houston is actually really tricky. And you would have to probably involve a third team here, probably Brooklyn, to allow for, I guess Houston could trade. Like, it would be let's say let's say it's Steven Adams, which, by the way, wouldn't hate this trade. Don't love that Adams has 3 years left on his deal, but still. So let's say it's Gabe and Steven Adams are kind of like the main parts of the trade. The Lakers would probably have to also send Dalton, I would say, or Jackson, I would say. So Jackson makes 3.4 million. So that would get you to, actually, that would work. If it would be Gabe and Jackson. Now, again, Jackson can't be moved, I don't believe, until like December, maybe, because he's a recently signed player. But yeah, I'm saying Jay, a few of these guys wouldn't be able to be traded. Jackson also can't be, according to Fanspo anyway. But in December, if they do decide to that if they decide they need more help here and Reed Shepherd isn't good enough, if a few, and by the way, like, this is how the league tends to go, right? These teams, like the Rockets, are going to enter the season hoping upon hope that Reed Shepherd is good enough to step into that spot and is ready as a second year player to be a starter on a title contender. Maybe he is. I think he's pretty well set up. They have plenty of defense around him so that, he won't be as easily attacked defensively or picked on defensively. He's a great shooter. So like that, you don't have to worry as much about, his gumming up the offense when he doesn't have the ball. So that also is helpful. But yeah, at the end of the day, like the Rockets, just like we saw with Miami the other day too, right? Where their Tyler Hero is going to miss the beginning of the season with a surgery. That like was it a company time surgery? That was really weird. But anyway, the Heat, right? They entered this season, or planned on entering the season, seeing if they could, compete in the bad Eastern Conference and see what they're capable of. Maybe you win a playoff series here or there, and then you get a couple bounces, and all of a sudden you're in the conference finals, again. But for them, they're going to be missing the engine of their offense at the beginning of the year with Tyler Hero. So if their season doesn't go very well at the beginning of it, does their organization, or the people in the organization who have been wanting to tear things down a little bit more, do they kind of look around and say, all right, Pat, can we finally do this? And do they kind of course correct and make Wiggins more realistically available? In this case, right, for the Rockets, they have plenty of center depth at this point. They don't have enough point guard depth. They need to address that point guard depth. Do they use some of the center depth to go out and get the point guard that they need? That's going to be interesting to see. Or, I would imagine they're going to enter the season first and see how Reed Shepherd looks. And if he doesn't look quite ready for it, then yeah, that conversation becomes a lot more tangible. It becomes a lot more realistic. The Lakers, for their sake, right? They're basically entering the season and they want to see what Maxi Kleber looks like, or that's at least what they're saying. They want to see what Gabe Vincent looks like, and they want to see what all of these moving parts look like at the early part of the season, and then they'll kind of reapproach the trade negotiation tables and have some more productive conversations with the Rockets, with the Heat, with team X, Y, or Z, based on how the early part of the season had gone. So, again, it sucks that it's for this reason, but this is how NBA seasons go. Maybe not this early, where you lose a key part of a title contender before the season even starts. But this is how seasons go, where teams have one outlook going into a season, and then all of a sudden, boom, something either happens good or bad. And now all of a sudden they have to rethink those things. and that presents new opportunities for their competitors, or it takes away opportunities from their competitors, right? So yeah, it's going to be like, Omar's Hall is saying he can see teams helping Houston. Watch Portland trade them Drew Holiday. They can try, but again, the Rockets are so close to that first apron, and they're hard capped below that first apron, that it's really difficult. Drew Holiday makes a lot of money. We could go like, let me pull up some of these teams here. Portland and the Rockets. Drew Holiday makes $32 million this year. And if you trade for Drew Holiday and you don't send Fred VanVleet, now all of a sudden you have $57.4 million devoted to the point guard position. And yeah, Drew would be perfect. He would be, the exact kind of player that you want to bring in. But in order to get a Drew Holiday, you would need to send out, because you're not sending out Kevin Durant. You're not sending out Alperen Şengün for Drew Holiday. Fred VanVleet has that no trade clause, which maybe, he has the player option regardless. So maybe he waives the no trade clause and is okay with being traded to Portland. Maybe not. But if you can't move one of those bigger contracts, now you're looking at like Dorian Finney-Smith, who makes 12.7. Jabari Smith makes 12.3. Reed Shepherd, who is the point guard depth that you're relying on heading into the season, he makes 10.6. That's 3 rotation players for Drew Holiday, and you're already pretty thin after trading for Kevin Durant. So, Drew would make a lot of sense for a lot of teams, but $32 million, not just this season, but he has 3 years left on his contract heading into this upcoming season. That's tough, man. Like, that's something that not very many teams are very interested in. And, I don't know if Drew Holiday gets traded. Do the Rockets trade for Anthony Simons, right, from Boston? Do they try to trade? Yeah, like Kobe White is another guy who might come to mind. Derek White from Boston, also somebody who Houston, I'm sure, is making some calls about. So, point being here that Houston, they are starting their season backed up into a wall, and it's a season very much worth saving, especially to an owner who has invested to the extent that Tillman Fertitta has. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see how this is going to go for the Houston Rockets. I'm really curious to see, what the leaks and reports coming out of Houston are going to be as they go into media day, and as their front office is made available to reporters this upcoming week or so. And then as you get into training camp and as you get into the early part of the season, depending on how Reed Shepherd looks, I would be surprised, frankly, if the Rockets and Lakers didn't have some kind of conversation about Gabe Vincent as kind of a stopgap. But I'm of the opinion that, like, because of how good Houston is elsewhere, they're probably looking for a little bit more than a stopgap. So, but this is again, I hate using this phrasing because at the end of the day, somebody's hurt right now and not able to play basketball for basically a whole year. But this is the kind of situation that the Lakers, they're kind of light on resources. So if they're able to get an extra second rounder by way of sending Gabe Vincent to Houston, I'd be open to that, right? I would be open to that so that, whenever, and especially if you can get a player who helps you a little bit and you can get that second rounder and take advantage of that desperation, I would be very open to that. That way, you maybe address one issue on your roster to at least a limited extent, and you have further resources to address other issues on your roster to greater extents. This is the kind of spot that, going into the season. Now, look, the Sharks are going to be swirling, right? There's blood in the water. So that all of these NBA teams are having the same ideas that we are. But yeah, this is the kind of spot that the Lakers should probably look to try to take advantage of. I feel dirty saying that, but it's because I'm in off-season mode, right? You go in, like, you're in the off-season and you start thinking, like, Pete and I just had like a philosophical talk on Friday, right? And so, like, you're in off-season mode and you're thinking about like world stuff and these deep philosophical questions about sports. And then, like, by the time I get to by the time you get to the season, you're like, ooh, somebody got hurt. Let's see if we could jump on that spot. Like, it's just, I gotta, get back into basketball shape here. I gotta figure out a way to like, bring, pods. But all right. So Gray Raj had this earlier when I was going through the tiers that pods starts at the 2. He's another 5'3" dude. Like their whole roster. All right, so the Golden State Warriors are thinking that they're gonna have Steph Curry. He's like 6'3", 6'4", maybe. Yeah, it's like 6'3", 6'4". His brother, I think, is a little shorter. Gary Payton II is like 6'3", 6'4". DeAnthony Melton is like 6'4", 6'5". Pods is like 6'3", 6'4". That's 5 guys in that. Like, we are entering 3-guard lineup territory. Now, it's a little different there because those guards do space the floor and they fly around on defense and stuff. So it wouldn't be quite as ugly, I don't think, as the 3-guard lineups that the Lakers were trotting out there under Darvin Ham previously. But they're just so small. And they lost Kevon Looney, who was their only bulk inside, unless you're saying that one white dude that they have, the tall white guy that they have, is going to step up. He might. He looked pretty solid in some smaller spots last year. But still, like, your center rotation is Al Horford, who isn't very big, Draymond Green, who's like 6'7", and that tall, lanky white dude. It's not ideal. Post, thank you, Quentin Post, Tam the Pessimist. Chat's on fire today. Like, chat, you guys are bringing it. Look at you guys. We're all getting it. Like, basketball's right around the corner, and I can totally see us all like, all right, we got some trade rumors, some trade speculation to talk about today. We got Rob and JJ talking on Thursday. We got all of this shit. Like, let's, we're all, and you guys are hitting me with like the information I'm looking for. Look at you guys freaking killing it. But yeah, like, I don't think the Warriors are in a tier with the Lakers. They're just too small. It's a tiny team. That is a very, and like, who, like, in those groups, you have, like, I guess you would have Draymond guarding Luka in that equation, but then that takes him out of the middle of the defense where he is special. You have Draymond maybe guarding LeBron, I guess, but, like, again, same issue. So you would maybe try to sneak him on Ayton, right, and have him gum up the offense by being in the middle there. And doing a lot of switching and stuff on pick and roll, which, okay, I can kind of see it, but who starts on Luka? Pods? Jimmy's gonna, like, you're gonna have Jimmy guard one of LeBron or Luka for the whole game? That seems unwise. So yeah, I don't that's I don't love that that Golden State roster. I don't think Golden State fans would love that roster, to be completely honest. That's kind of an ugly roster. Like, I actually think the Clippers roster makes a hell of a lot more sense. They're just clearly cursed. Like, they are heading into a cursed season. I'm willing to call that one now. Basketball gods are not going to be thrilled with them, right? But yeah, I think let me know what you guys think. Hit me with your questions and comments over the next few days here. But I think the Lakers are pretty squarely in tier 2 with Minnesota. Now, if you want to have Minnesota ahead of the Lakers, then I'm perfectly fine with that. They kicked the Lakers' ass in last year's playoffs, got them out of the first round in pretty unceremonious fashion. I did think they got a little worse this year, right? Losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but that was were they a Nickeil Alexander-Walker? So it was a 5-game series, And Raj would say that there were some close games there. I'm of the opinion that a 5-game series is a 5-game series is a 5-game series, but Minnesota loses Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The Lakers gain DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart. Is that enough to, take it from a 5-game loss to Luka's healthier, which I think is the biggest force multiplier there. So if you want to have the Lakers even or slightly ahead of the Minnesota Timberwolves, I won't begrudge you. I personally would have the Timberwolves a little ahead of the Lakers just because of the extent to which they took belt to ass last year. But end of the day, I think the Lakers have a real shot at home court advantage heading into the season. They have a nice, easy early slate to the season, so you should have some momentum. This is basically there were boxes that needed to be checked along the way here, starting it with how the offseason was going to go and all of that good stuff. And then you arrive here where the Lakers stand now. And I think the Lakers have a legitimate chance to push chips into the middle of the table and do so for the right player or the right players. And if the Lakers were able to get Rui get Wiggins without giving up Rui, or if the Lakers are able to turn Gabe Vincent into a Steven Adams, right? As you kind of switch positional depth there. If you're able to do enough of those little moves, like the big moves you got taken care of already. You have Luka. You have LeBron. Austin's a pretty damn good third best player. Ask people in Houston how much they wish they had Austin Reeves right now, by the way. It was funny, all of the comments that we had at the end of last episode and the conversation that we had at the end of last episode, ask people in Houston how much they wish they had an Austin Reeves on their team right now. But anyway, as far as what we would have liked to have seen going into the season, I'm not saying I would have liked to have seen a player suffer a potentially career altering at this stage of his career. But a season ending injury, I would never root for that. But the Lakers do get a little bit of help here. They do get a little bit of luck, and they go into the season, I think, squarely in that second tier of the Western Conference, have a real shot at a top 4 seed. And then from there, it's you take care of business in the first round. You go into your next series, as a slight underdog, maybe. And then you see if you can shock the world in the conference finals. And then all of a sudden you're in the NBA finals against a team that's going to be coming from a really bad Eastern Conference. There's a path here. And if you would have asked me right after that Minnesota Timberwolves beatdown going into the offseason, can you identify a path here for the Lakers? I don't know if I would have been able to identify one or realistically identify one. Here, I just did. And I think the path looks pretty good. All right. That is going to do it. Fun episode here. And like I said, I said this on Sunday. Now, I didn't think this was going to be the reason why, but we are now in that stretch of the off season where we start to get actual news to react to every night, and we get back to news from the Lakers training camp and stuff to react to every night, which means we'll be back to lowdown episodes starting tonight. I'm going to narrate the LeBron one, and then I'll narrate the Austin one for tomorrow, and then we'll be back. Then I'll be able to react to Rob and JJ's dual presser from Thursday. That'll be a lowdown. So we are basically back to your regular scheduled programming. Thank you. I do want to say this really, really quickly. We had a special offseason this year. Considering the Lakers were knocked out of the playoffs early, obviously, the numbers took a hit then. But they have been going, up. They have been cruising upward basically throughout the entirety. We had a record-breaking July, and then we had record-breaking August and September. So you guys, we're on track for a record-breaking September. So you guys have absolutely brought it, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. So please continue to hit that like button, continue to hit that subscribe button. Let's keep those numbers going in the right direction so we can kill the more the numbers grow, the better the show can become, because the revenue that I get from that, I invest back into the show. I go out and I get co-hosts and I get producers and I do all these fun things. So I really, really appreciate it. My family really, really appreciates it. We, as a community here, really, really appreciate it. So shouts to you guys. Have a great rest of your evening. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you guys